Their ego, which is what you think about yourself versus the truth, is I totally believe in myself. You ever seen someone like that who's like over the top, puffer fishy? Oh yeah, I know I could totally do it if I wanted to. If I tried, I could totally do it if I tried.
I've been there myself. I've experienced that cognitive dissonance of I have these goals and I'm not working out and I'm not here. I want to be here, but I'm here. And you start beating yourself up over it until one day you just get that belief. You can move forward.
And then you set level 4 goals and then you achieve those. And then it's like, ooh, level 5 self-belief, right? And so it's a constant progression. But if someone with level 10 self-belief at the end of the journey says, hey, you can do it, you got this, it's just empty words. That's where all this stuff was born. It's always done in your mind long before it's done externally. But the thing that I think is hard is a lot of people actually aren't like that. I never used to know this, but some people really do stumble upon success.
Hey friends, you're tuned in to the Learn or Be Learned podcast, a show where wisdom meets curiosity in order to discover the human experience. I'm your host, Shiva D, and remember, you either learn from or you're learned from. Now, let's get back to the show.
All right, welcome back, Learn or Be Learned community. This week I have a very interesting guest. His name is Alan Lazarus. He is huge in the podcasting space. He's done great things in business. He has a lot of knowledge there, and his creed almost seems to be focused around health, wealth, love, fitness, and overall improvement. He's had ever since a turning point in his life, and we'll be sure to get into it. But before that, Alan, thanks for being here. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. Like I said, I researched you. I researched your show. It's very clear that you're trying to help people unlock their potential, and that is what I live and breathe every day. That is what I think is going to change the world. So I'm very honored to be here.
Yeah. And before we even jump in, I saw that you post 7 days a week, every day.
For
That's
podcast?
on your podcast? Yeah, that's inspiring. That's impressive, honestly.
I appreciate that. To a podcaster, that's like, whoa. And these aren't quick one-off 5-minute episodes either. These are, real
I saw that.
full-length episodes. And to a non-podcaster, when you say you have 1,600 episodes, it means literally nothing. To a podcaster, it's like, oh my goodness, So thank you. I appreciate it. It's been nothing short of absolutely brutal, but it's been deeply meaningful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did you always do 7, or did you kind of work your way up there?
Yeah, we definitely worked our way up. So we started with 1 a week and we locked that in. Then we did 2, then we jumped to 3, then 4, and then we jumped from 4 to 5 and then 5 to 7. But we have a production team now. And so at the beginning, it was just us. And no way. I could not start at 7. We're very blessed at this point to produce. We produce a lot of podcasts. Kevin has another podcast, my co-host. I have another one. But without a production team, there's no way. Yeah. So we ramped up.
Yeah. But that's good. I mean, I love it. And, even on your podcast, you talk a lot about productivity and improving yourself. Yeah. And I think that's what we're here today for. And, before we jump all into all this, I'd love for you to share your backstory with the audience so they can catch up a little bit on what got you into this space and what kind of was the pivoting moment for you.
Yeah. So I appreciate the question. I think it's important. You got to know who you're talking to, and most importantly, you got to know who you're taking advice from or guidance from, or, all of us need to be very aware of who that person is and what they are when no one's watching, because the world's gotten very noisy and there's a lot of people talking like they know everything when in reality they've never actually done anything. So I appreciate the question. And before I share my story, I want to say 2 things. One is it's not just the message, it's the messenger. So I'm grateful for the question. The second thing is I had no idea. A lot of the way I'm going to tell this story is kind of like rewatching the movie from a higher sense of awareness at 35 years old. I often joke, I say I'm 35. I'm hoping to hit puberty at 36 because I look 15. But when I tell you the story, when I was going through it, I didn't understand any of this at the time. I only understand it because every year in my 30s, I've been sort of rewatching the movie of my life. And I have a really good memory, fortunately. But from a higher sense of awareness, it's kind of, I use Finding Nemo as an example. It's like you see that movie as a kid, or at least I did, and then you see it when you're an adult and you're like, oh, I never noticed that before. That's hilarious. Okay, gotcha. Or that's, deeper than I thought, or whatever. So, okay. So my life started out definitely in adversity. So when I was 2 years old, I had an older sister who was 6, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom at the time, and my father actually passed away in a car accident. So he was 28 at the time.
Yeah.
And again, I was kind of raised by my mom and my older sister, but I did have a stepdad. You asked me how to pronounce my last name before this, and whether it's Lazaros or Lazarus, that was my stepdad's last name. His name's Steve Lazarus. And from age 3 to 14, I had a stepfather named Steve, and he left my family at 14. Now, at the time, I didn't understand any of this, and I now have just honestly in the last couple of years been open to even talking about it, to be honest. Mom and stepdad never really got along. They fought a lot, and my sister sort of protected me from a lot of that, but it was definitely not an easy upbringing. My father was in sales. When he passed away, my mom was a stay-at-home mom and didn't really know how to raise 2 kids, income, all that stuff. So she got with my stepdad, and my stepdad did well in the economy. He worked for a company called Agfa. And this was like, mid to late 90s into the 2000s, the early 2000s, when the dot-com bubble was happening. And we did very, very well. We did pretty well. My stepdad did pretty well. So I call it boats and BS. So we did a lot of, we had a yacht. We had a custom-made yacht being built. When he left, we did snowmobiles and ski trips and Dreamcast and Xbox. I got financially we did well, even though we weren't necessarily super happy at home. Financially, we had a nice home and we had plenty of income, and we had motorcycle and cars and all that stuff.
Yeah.
When he left, he took so he got the yacht and the apartment building that we owned. We owned apartment buildings. And by we, I was a kid. I mean them, right? And then we got the home and the dog, and he took the income with him. And so this is interesting. I went from basically pretty well off. My neighbors and my friends would say you're rich, to I don't know how I'm going to go to college. And I now get free lunch at school because our income is so low. My mom was a lunch lady, and she had the summers off, but she didn't make a lot of money. And we shopped at thrift stores and that kind of stuff. And so we had to do whatever we could to keep the house. And yeah, we really struggled. So I didn't know how I was going to go to college. So what I did, fortunately, was I did really, really well in high school. Excuse me. And got scholarships and financial aid and went to my dream college. My dream college was called WPI, Worcester Polytechnic Institute. And it's kind of like a mini MIT. It is one of the best tech schools in the world. And I didn't know how I was going to go, even though I had that dream at 10 years old. And I eventually bootstrap, work, straight A's, except for English. English never came naturally to me. And I eventually get into my dream school, and it's like, holy crap, 50 grand a year. Oof. And this is back then. Yeah. So this is 2007. I'm graduating high school, and it's $50,000 a year. Like, how are we going to do this? Fortunately, I got financial aid. My mom helped, and I got a lot of scholarships and no interest loans and stuff like that. So I got to go to school, got my computer engineering degree, got my master's in business, stayed for the 5th year for that. Had a bunch of jobs in between. I painted houses in Maine, little odd jobs here and there. And then eventually went into corporate. I worked for iRobot. I worked for a company called Sensata Technologies, a company called Oz Development. I lived in LA for a short time. Did a lot of soul searching, job hopping, corporate ladder climbing, so to speak. Eventually landed at a company called Cognex, and I'm an inside sales engineer there. I start a little inside sales team there, and then I get promoted to outside sales, and I manage a territory, Connecticut, Western Mass, and Vermont. And I'm driving all over Western New England, selling industrial automation equipment into manufacturing facilities, essentially. And what Cognex does is machine vision. It's kind of like the eyes of a robot, for lack of better phrasing. And so I'm at that point doing very well. I paid off $84,000 in 1 year worth of school debt. I had $150,000 in an investment account. I went from, the beginning of right out of college, I went from 65 to 85, 85 to 105, 105 to 125, 125 to almost 200. Cognex had this awesome referral program, and I brought all my friends from WPI to the company, and not all of them, but several of them. And I got big bonuses for that. So I just did really well that year. And so I was a 1% global earner, which is wild. I'm in my early 20s, 24, 25 years old, mid 20s. And I am making almost $200,000 a year US. And I don't have any kids. I don't have a home or expenses. I mean, it was just wild. So I just invested it all into the stock market, tons of tech companies and stuff. And then eventually I'm 26 years old. And at this point, the part I haven't said is that I partied too much and too often, for sure. High school friends, college friends, corporate friends, lots of that. Too many friends, everything for everyone, nothing for myself type of thing. So I'm up in New Hampshire. I'm with my little cousin. His name's Dan. He's 17 at the time. And it's 2016. And we're not doing anything crazy. We're not partying. And I'm headed to TGI Fridays. We were playing Call of Duty. We're going to get food. And the snowbanks that year were up above the signs. It was one of those really bad winters where there was tons of snow up in New Hampshire. And the yield sign was covered. And I was supposed to yield, and I didn't. I end up on the wrong side of the road. I look up from the GPS, and there's what I thought was a Mack truck in front of me. And that was the moment for me of there's no way. There's no chance that we survive this. This is the end. This is it. And, just awful moment. Fortunately, airbags did deploy. I was driving a 2004 Volkswagen Passat, which I used to actually call this car the Tank. It was a German-engineered steel trap of a car, 2004. That car saved my life for sure, 100%. And both airbags deployed. Me and my cousin are okay. He hurt his knee on the airbag. I hurt my face on the airbag. We're definitely rattled, but physically we're okay. Mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, though, I am sitting there looking at the car thinking, my dad died when I was 2, when he was 28. In a car accident. I've seen pictures of his car. I show pictures in my speeches of my car. They don't look very different. And so for my little cousin, he's still got that sort of teenage invincibility complex a little bit. And so he was tweeting about it, didn't think a big deal out of it, right? And I'm sitting there going, whoa. I not only that could that have been it, but I witnessed what happened with my whole family when my dad died at 28. And I know what that is. And that really could have been it. And so that was my sort of wake up call. And the best way I can describe it now, again, this is in hindsight. At the time, I didn't understand any of this, but filled with regret, wasn't proud of who I became, wasn't proud of who I was as a man, didn't understand really why I wasn't fulfilled, drank too much and too often, too many surface level relationships, that kind of stuff. The best way I can describe it now, and again, this is in hindsight, is I was very successful from the outside looking in. I was achievement oriented, and I was achieving a lot. And I was on my way to my dreams, which was to be a Fortune 50 CEO like my hero, Steve Jobs, hero at the time. So I was on my way, but I wasn't fulfilled. And so I was successful from the outside looking in, but not from the inside out. And after that, I really flipped the script. And by flip the script, what I mean is I finally focused on the inside, and then success became a byproduct of that instead of the other way around. And so the quote that I always say now in all my speeches and all that stuff is I wear this true north around my neck. It's a necklace with a North Star on it. And as growing up, I didn't know this at the time either, but growing up, I always competed with my sister for the Christmas tree. She always wanted the angel on top. I always wanted the star. And in hindsight, it's kind of cool because she was called Cake by my mom and I was called Shine. And so, yeah, I don't know why I've always been drawn to the North Star, but I say this quote: "You cannot see the stars during the day. They're always there, but sometimes it takes the darkness to see clearly that which you simply could not within the light." And so what that means is that when you're in the dark, when you're in emotional or physical or mental or spiritual pain, you're going to notice things you didn't notice before. You're going to think differently. It's going to shift something. And the two stars that I had noticed that I'd never noticed before is one is Tony Robbins' TED Talk. Regardless of what you think of Tony, that TED Talk is, in my opinion, the most valuable TED Talk ever done. It's unbelievable. Number two, and more importantly, there's a woman by the name of Bronnie Ware from Australia who worked in hospice for 8 years, and she lived with the terminally ill, and she took care of them as her job, and she noticed the same regrets. So she wrote a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And to this day, I actually have these flashcards in my pocket, and they're all tattered and ripped, and they're old. They're actually been spilled on and all that kind of stuff. But anyways, so that book, what a coincidence, right? I almost died in that car accident. My father did die in a car accident. And I see a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, the star that I never noticed before. I pick up that book and it talks about how everyone has regret. You know, I wish. She saw these people that were terminally ill reflecting on their life, saying, I wish.
That's an impressive
And the number
story.
one regret of the
I
dying
love
is
the
I wish I
part
had lived a life
where
true
you
to myself
referenced that
and not
from
what
the
others expected
external
of me.
world, you looked
Did I
like you
really
had
want to
it
be an
all,
engineer?
but you didn't feel
Or
fulfilled
did my
from
mom
the
say
internal
engineers make a lot of
inside.
money and you're really good at
And
math?
when
Maybe
you
it's a
flip that
combination of
script,
both.
like you said,
My point
that made all
is
the
I had
difference.
so many regrets.
And that was a reflection of
And
success.
I had my quarter
because
life
you worked
crisis,
from
and I
inwards
decided
out
to change
rather
the
than
script, flip
trying
the
to do
script.
outwards
Instead
in,
of achieving at the expense of
in a
fulfillment,
way never works because
I'm going to
it's
focus on
almost
fulfillment
like
and
a
inner
facade
work and
of,
personal
you know,
development
look,
and
I'm
personal
doing great.
growth,
It's almost like social
self-improvement,
media, right?
and then
When
have
people
success
post
be a
the happy
byproduct of that. And
moments,
so here I
but
am
they
9
don't
years
post the
later,
sad moments. So it just looks like you're happy all the
and
time.
it's actually
Or you're
wild
doing
because
great all the
I
time.
went all the way back to broke.
So
And now
yeah,
I'm
it's really
finally
looks like,
past where I was back
right,
then.
right.
But that took way
And
longer than I thought, by the way.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
the transformation is
I love
possible.
it.
And
also,
you have
I
to make a
noticed you
decision.
mentioned a
Because
couple times
people
through your
ask me, like, do you have
story
to get in a car
the
accident for
idea
that
of
to
your,
happen? I
your
said,
spiritual side.
that was my wake-up call. I
Perhaps
think
that
wake-up
was
calls are all
a
around
wake-up
us.
call
It's just whether or not you
that
want to
made
look at them.
you,
And
you know,
you can either
look more at
proactively
the
look for the
spirit of
answers
who
by
you
asking the
are,
right questions and really being honest with yourself.
internally, right? So
Because I
I'm
knew I
curious
was
as
drinking too
to
much back then.
how
I
that
knew I
portion
had
of
the
your
whisper. I
life
just didn't
has
face it. I didn't face
become
the truth. So I think deep down we all know.
influential.
It's just whether or not you're going
to
to
what
answer
you
that
do.
call. And so I answered that call, and here I am 9 years later, and now I help people answer their own call, so to speak, and that are connected. So I think everything's sort of a mirror. And people that are disconnected from their own calling can't recognize it in other people. They just think that person has something they don't. Maybe that person believes in themselves more or whatever. And I think in some cases that's true. As someone who I would say the moment that I met you energetically, I could see that you're also in your calling. And it's not like you're in or out of your calling. It's a spectrum, 0 to 10. So 10, none of us are 10 out of 10 in our calling, and none of us are 0 out of 10 in our calling, right? And whether you want to call it a calling or a purpose or a mission or whatever, I like calling. I think that all of us are to a certain extent within that. And so how did my spiritual life influence my work? It's so much more. I have this folder. It's called My Deepest Why. And it's got thousands at this point, but I started it when there was only a couple. Anytime any listener reached out or any person reached out saying that I had positively impacted their life, a lot of people will say thank you. Anything that indicated that, testimonials, whatever, I saved it in this one folder, and it just accumulated. And it's getting to the point now where it's like playful. I'm so grateful, and I still take the time to do it. But it's getting to the point now where it's so hard to keep up with, which is awesome. It's a great problem to have, right? But I still do it. I have an audio from a team member of mine. Her name's Lizzie, that I have to screen cap to put into that folder, because when times get really hard, I'm going to go to that folder. I'm going to remind myself of why I'm doing this, because I always playfully joke. It's like, why don't I just go back to selling tech equipment? Like, let's go sell Oura rings, right?
Right.
And then my soul, my heart, my mind says, you can't go back. You're not going to go back and sell industrial automation equipment. Like, this is who you are. This is who you're supposed to be. And you know it, and you've always known it, even when you didn't know it. And so what I would say is fulfillment is a byproduct of the soul's recognition of alignment with its highest calling. Meaning, if you're fulfilled, you are in alignment. You're in alignment with your core values. You're in alignment with your goals. You're in alignment with who you're meant to be. You're in alignment with your own unique potential. And you're in alignment with your contribution, your unique contribution, and the quality of life that you love. That's what I help people with. I'm a business coach, but really what it is you coach. So my youngest client is 18. My oldest client is 63. All different businesses all over the world, all different industries. And I've had hundreds of people at this stage. And what you figure out is that some of the businesses are misaligned with their calling, so you're not going to win. You can only sustain pushing yourself for so long. You have to have a pull that's also there. So I say, I'm pushing myself to stay in the pull. And I use Finding Nemo again as a reference, the East Australian Current, if you've ever seen the movie, the EAC, that's like the pull. So some people seem so motivated when in reality, a lot of them are just in their calling. They're doing what they were uniquely suited to do, born and bred for this. Like this podcast, I am born and bred for this. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. If we were talking about sports right now, I would shut off completely. I've got nothing. Like I can't even talk about it. It's so annoying, right? I tell my friends from home, it's like, I used to say this, if you guys spent 1/10 as much effort on your own career as you do memorizing all these stats, you guys would be amazing, right? But again, now I get it. Maybe that's their calling. Maybe sports is their calling. I don't know. Probably not. It's probably a numbing escape. But that's my answer is spiritually speaking, deep down, am I living in my calling? And if your answer is no, that's okay. That's a start. I would have said hell no prior to my car accident. I just wasn't asking that question. I was asking the wrong questions, And now I'm finally asking that question constantly of how in alignment am I? How in my calling am I? Am I on purpose? And if you can do that consistently and stick with it, knowing that it's going to be actually the harder road, not the easier one, you actually will end up with more success. And that's the interesting irony of it all.
Yeah. And it goes all back to the idea of this cognitive dissonance between, back when you said you looked on the outer world, you looked great. On the internal, you didn't feel fulfilled. And I think it's that dissonance in your own head that other people don't see that's kind of dragging your soul down to where you don't feel like you're fulfilling this purpose, this calling of why you're here. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier about this numbing agents of what people do to escape. There's various things that people can do, but I think one that's really interesting is this idea of video games. Because if you look at it, people will go to video games because it's fun, but deep down, you're getting this sense of fulfillment and satisfaction as if you are leveling up because you're playing with a character that's leveling up in life, skill sets, and everything. And
but then when you leave the virtual world, you're the same. I used to say exactly that. I used to be a semi-pro gamer, and I got obsessed with games, and now I understand why, because my childhood was very challenging, and that was my escape. And I loved the process of getting better at things. So that was everything is a duality between what was true and what was actually an escape. But anyways, to your point, I used to say that all the time. Is I used to play a game called Diablo 2. You're a lot younger than me, so you might not remember Diablo 2. Okay, so do you mind if I ask how old you are, just so I have context?
Yeah, 25.
25. Okay, so I'm 35, so a decade. Yeah, so you probably know of Diablo 2, but you didn't play Diablo 2.
I didn't play it.
Fair.
No.
You had these characters that you'd level up, and you could get to level 99. And I have a company now called Next Level University, so obviously I believe in leveling up. But I would leave the game, and I felt accomplished in the game. But then when I left the game, my life still sucked. And now I try to apply that same principle of leveling up, but to me, to my life, to level up my courage, level up my discipline, level up my knowledge, level up my experience, level up my contemplation, my reflection. And I think that that's really the one thing that you have complete control over anyway. And no, I can't change where I grew up. I can't change the fact that I playfully call it the Boulevard of Broken Dreams. I can't change that, my dad died. But what I can change is myself. I can improve myself. And even that's a duality, because parts of you can try to change, you probably can't because you are who you are, but you can improve who you are. You can get better speaking skills. You can get better communication skills. You can become a stronger leader. You can articulate things better. You can understand more and learn the economy and how it works and why it works that way. You can become more valuable. And when you change those things inside out, the out will change too. It's just a big lag. So that's why you got to be patient. It's such a big lag. It's brutal. It's like I make a change, and I took a leadership course last year, and it's just now starting to kind of pay dividends, if that makes sense. And so that's what it is we're impatient. We don't believe in ourselves enough. And we don't believe, I always say this, why would Warren Buffett invest in a stock that he didn't believe would grow? If you don't believe you can grow, and you don't believe that that growth is going to produce your dreams, you're not going to invest. And then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now you don't achieve your dreams. You see, I told you I wasn't good enough. See, I told you I wasn't worth it. See, I told you I shouldn't have invested. And so you get stuck in that. So you didn't ask me this question, but the one thing that I would share at the end of this sort of soliloquy is self-belief and self-worth. I have studied this industry of self-help, self-improvement, self-growth, personal development for 9 years straight. And I'm talking obsessively, like to a drastic extent. I'm sure that's clear to everyone. But I never found enough stuff on self-belief and self-worth. Why aren't we talking about those two things? Those are like the most important two things. And so NLU, Next Level University, that's what we talk about all the time, is how do you build self-belief? How do you build it? Half the people in this industry, brother, they have 10 out of 10 self-belief and they don't even know it's a thing. And they're talking to other people, and other people are going, yeah, but that's not, I do doubt myself all the time. Right? It's like Gary Vee doesn't doubt himself. Not at all. Almost to a delusional extent, right? I mean, come on, get in the gym with me, brother. But the point is, these people that have 10 out of 10 self-belief, they don't know that other people don't have it. They've like always kind of had it. I was one of those. The only reason I even know this is my business partner was like, dude, that's terrible advice. Like Will Smith, aim for the stars. It's like, Will, that works for you, brother. Other people are like, I could never do that. And so they do nothing. What do they do instead? They don't even try. And what does that do to their self-belief? Make it even worse. Not everyone can delay gratification for 15 years, to prove to themselves that they actually could do what they said they could do originally. And so we just sound crazy to these people who don't have self-belief. And now I understand that enough to say, listen, what is your true level of self-belief? What is your true level of self-worth? And how do we start there? And if you have level 3 self-belief, let's be honest about that, and then set level 3 goals. And when you achieve level 3 goals, now all of a sudden you're like, ooh, level 4 self-belief. And then you set level 4 goals, and then you achieve those. And then it's like, ooh, level 5 self-belief, right? And so it's a constant progression. But if someone with level 10 self-belief at the end of the journey says, hey, you can do it, you got this, it's just empty words. And there's decades in between of building your character in your own personal development along the way.
Yeah, I've had conversations with so many people about this idea where even just the other day I was telling this one person, you can only help people that want to be helped, right? And if you look backwards at what that really entails is it's all about their mindset and their own thought process. They have to first want it, they have to first think about it. And in reference to what we're talking about, I believe your thoughts produce your beliefs, your beliefs produce your actions produce the competency, and then you have confidence, and then you level up to the next one. You go, okay, can I do that next level 4 goals? And you keep going. But I think what nobody, like you're saying, nobody talks about is that belief and thought process, the mindset stage, which a lot of people say, how do I get rich? How do I make money? And how do I do this and that? But nobody's telling me the secrets. Nobody's telling me the formula. But truly, if you look and dissect what successful people often talk about, it's really mindset.
Yeah.
It's this strong conviction that no matter what, I'll figure it out. It's this strong conviction in themselves, this self-belief that I know myself and this fulfills me, what happens, no matter what happens.
Mm-hmm.
It's this what do they call it? Minimizing regret framework, where they like look to minimize regrets in their life. So it's like,
Yes.
I'd rather do this and fail and know that I tried than to look backwards and not have tried at all.
100%.
So it's all these things. Yeah, it's mindset truly to start to level up. And I think if we just want to mesh everything what we're talking about, mindset requires this sense of reflection and self-awareness first, where you stop escaping and you stop using these numbing agents. You stop, you take time and you actually think about it. And I'm sure after your accident, you had a lot of times where you just sat around and thought. You wrote things in your notes, or you just had to get your thoughts out, and there was a lot of internal reflection, and that's the only way your mindset changed.
That's where all this stuff was born. It's always done in your mind long before it's done externally. But the thing that I think is hard is a lot of people actually aren't like that. I never used to know this, but some people really do stumble upon success. I never have. I always premeditated my success. Like, I always envisioned it and then made it happen. That's actually not how some people do it. And there was an app, a website in college. They called it Stumble Upon. It's kind of like webcam roulette. And I always thought it was the dumbest thing ever. But on my floor, everyone was doing it. What a waste of time, right? But anyways, basically what you'd do is you'd be on your webcam and you'd do silly things, and then it would go to the next webcam and there'd be weird, funny, silly, gross, whatever stuff. And everyone on my floor was doing it. We at WPI, we were on Riley 1 is what we called it. Stanford Riley is the dorm. And I actually think that's how a lot of people live their lives. I think they're just stumbling upon things and then drawing conclusions about themselves based on that. So like my business partner, Kev, he was a really good baseball player. We went to high school together. He was an all-star baseball player. He always thought he got lucky. So he wasn't like, hey, I want to go get great at baseball. I'm going to go prove to myself I can do it and build belief. He just did stuff and then stumbled upon that and therefore didn't self-assign it. And so he didn't build belief. He just kind of got trapped by his own, okay, if I strike out, am I still good? Am I not? That kind of thing. And so what I don't want to do is share with other people as if they have self-belief. And that's actually been one of the hardest things in the world for me. And this is another lesson underneath that, which is every strength you have comes with a massive weakness. That's been alarming as I've matured. It's been nothing short of alarming. So, for example, I was on
has a strong weakness.
Every strength has a huge weakness that comes with it. So,
Okay.
So self-belief is a strength, but arrogance is a weakness. And there's a blind spot of people who don't have self-belief. They just think I'm full of it. They really do. They're like, oh yeah, okay, bro. And then when I do it, they're like, oh my God. You want to know how you know? I said I would start a podcast and blah, blah, blah. And then people are like, oh, look at oh my God, right? You did it. It's like, what do you think I was saying? You thought I was just talking?
Yeah.
Right? They're like so blown away. They're like, oh, I believed in you the whole time, but then they're blown away when you do it, right? It's like, oh, you really didn't know. Yeah, it turns out they don't have belief, and that's okay. So if they have level 2 belief and I'm saying level 10 things, they think I'm full of it. And by the way, some of them are saying level 10 things and they know it's not real. And I thought it was real because mine was. Yeah, so that's so fascinating. And then the other thing too is you have these strengths. So I'll give you an example with me, but I want everyone thinking of themselves. I was on a relationship talks coaching session earlier today. We coach couples, my girlfriend and I. And they're trying to buy a home. And we're reverse engineering the numbers. So I'm a computer engineer. I was the guy who got straight A's in calculus while partying. Like it's math and science just is right there. I call it STEM-BIF: science, technology, engineering, math, mathematics, business, and finance. That stuff for me is like second nature. It just always clicked. You know what doesn't click? Emotional intelligence, emotional maturity, effective communication was not easy for me. I'm still working on how to communicate with emotionally driven people. I'm very hyper rational, that kind of stuff. So we're on this coaching session and I'm like, okay, you want a $350,000 house. And this is how much cash on hand you have. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. All right. Here's the mortgage. Let's go on. Okay. Awesome. And we did it. We reverse engineered it. And Emilia, after the session, she said, you did such a good job. Great work. And I said, what do you mean? She said, usually people are just nodding their heads and they don't really get it. I actually explained it to where they get it. I already get it, right? I'm not going to be shocked when we get our next home. I already know how to do it mathematically. I can reverse engineer a finish line. That's why I'm a business coach. And what I didn't understand, and this is my point, math is a huge strength. Reverse engineering finish lines is a huge strength. I went through my life having no idea no one else was doing that. When they said, "Oh, I want to be, Joe Rogan," I was like, "Okay, let's go." Right? And I've had clients come to me. I'll tell this story briefly. One client from Canada, he did video production. He said, "I want to have the most successful video production company in Canada." So I, behind the scenes, did my research, looked it up, British Columbia Pictures. We're tracking 32 habits. He's grinding 7 days a week. He's working 12-hour days. He finally says, like, "Dude, I can't keep this up." And I was like, "Well, you wanted to have the most successful production company in Canada, right?" And he's like, and I told him British Columbia, and I said 60 billion a year, and that was what it was at the time. And he's like, "Dude, no." And I was like, "Oh, you were just saying stuff." I don't ever, people say this. They're like, "Oh, I want to be a billionaire." It turns out they never looked it up. I literally am blown away. I'm like, how many billionaires? I did this with one of my clients. She said she wanted to be a billionaire. And in my head, I'm like, okay, let's do it. Like, that's a doable thing. It's possible, right? So I actually reverse engineer it. And I said, eventually I found out she doesn't want to work. And I'm like, oh, okay, so what's going on here? I eventually confront her, for lack of better phrasing. I say, B. Her name's B. It's actually Bianca. I say, how many billionaires are there? And she's like, I don't know. And I said, 3,200. I say, how many female billionaires are there? She's a female. She's like, I don't know. And I said, probably maybe 10% of them. Unfortunately, by the way, please don't hate me. Please hate the statistics, not me. And I said, how many of them are self-made, no inherited money? She's like, I don't know. I was like, very, very few. I said, okay, how many of them didn't have investors? They built a company without investors. The answer is 0. Listen, if you want to do something that's never been done, I'm happy to help you do it. But you need to know what you're signing up for. There is no 4-hour work week for a billionaire. And so people say things that they want. I never understood that they have no clue what that means. You can't just want to be a billionaire and then like go to the beach. You know what I mean? And so again, if this triggers anyone, I do trigger people. I'm sorry. The truth of the matter is I would much rather you just aim for what's really doable for you and then build self-belief and self-worth along the way. This other person has now since relinquished that. I don't want you shooting for something that's 10 out of 10 and then hating yourself all along the way when, quite frankly, it's not even really doable for you. And I'm not trying to be unkind, but it is doable for you, but not unless you want to work basically every day for the next 40 years. Mathematically speaking. And so every strength comes with a huge weakness. If you're amazing at something, you have no idea that other people aren't. It just comes easy to you and you naturally undervalue it because it's always come easy. And so hopefully that helps everybody.
No, I love that. It's almost, you can have the goals that you want, but you have to be ready to sacrifice certain aspects. And I don't think people think about the sacrifices it takes for certain goals. Even when I started the podcast 3 years ago, I remember telling not too many people, but just a couple people. I'm like, hey, I think I'm going to start a podcast. I'm like, oh, that'd be really cool. It's like I would love to do one too. And a lot of people say that, and then you start. People are like, oh wow, you started. This is awesome. And then the support dips immediately because now you're in the day to day, and over time, people would come up to me and say, hey, I want to join you. Like, let's do a podcast together. I love that. And you start to see, I had another guest prior, and he was telling me this really interesting idea about accountability and how the reason people will say, hey, can I join you in the gym? Hey, can I start a podcast with you? Is because they're almost borrowing your accountability because they haven't developed it for themselves.
I think they're borrowing your belief. I think
Belief,
they're
yeah, that
borrowing
too.
your self-belief. Yeah, because if you have high self-belief, that holds you accountable. Whereas if you don't really believe you're going to get there anyway, there's no accountability. There's no opportunity cost. So it's fun to say. I didn't mean to
Yeah, and
interrupt
you
you though.
just
Continue.
basically
Yeah.
no, you're good. You basically, they're hitching a ride on your accountability, your beliefs, and then essentially that in turn, let's say you can't make it to the gym that day, they will naturally start to drop off as well. because the whole time they were never accountable with themselves. They were never had belief in themselves. It was belief in you, or it was this idea of I don't want to let you down, or you know what I mean? So it's really interesting that it all starts from the idea of mindset, belief, and reverse engineering your goals to figure out what do I need to sacrifice and what does it take to get there. Because I think a lot of people, and I think there has been studies to prove that the more you just talk about things without doing them, it also just gives you dopamine of as if you've
Yeah,
actually
delusion.
achieved
And
it.
it creates delusion.
Hmm.
Yeah, talking without action creates delusion. Everything is easier to talk about than to do. I mean, even this episode, right? The fact that this is going even reasonably well is only because of all the episodes prior. You know, the way I've articulated some things, if anything has been sparked in any of you, and one thing I will say, I'm not easily likable. I'm just going to call the elephant out. So if you hate me, I hope that you aren't villainizing me. That's all I would say. I think hate's a strong word, but please don't villainize me because this might be true. And if it's true, it could transform your life. So I'm not an easily likable person. I understand that. Okay. But the second piece of this is the whether it's accountability, self-belief, self-worth. The other thing underneath all of this too is responsibility. But here's the conundrum. If I don't believe in myself, why would I take more responsibility? And so I think that everything comes down to self-worth and self-belief, but self-belief is the most important. And I think that one of the things that's hard is that people who don't believe in themselves actually don't know that they don't believe in themselves. Some people do. Some people are like, I just don't believe in myself enough. And that resonates. But I know some people who actually think they do. Their ego, which is what you think about yourself versus the truth, is oh, yeah, I totally believe in myself. You ever seen someone like that who's like over the top, puffer fishy? Oh, yeah, I know I could totally do it if I wanted to. If I tried, I could totally do it if I
If I
tried.
wanted to.
Yeah, if I
Yeah.
really wanted to. It's like,
Yeah.
and this is the question I would ask everybody, because I think some of those people are very toxic, and I want to encourage you to sail away because they might be holding you back with their giant ego and their toxicity. That was happening to me for sure. Why would someone with level 10 self-belief and so much confidence and certainty have level 2 goals? Yeah. It's because it's not
That's a good
real.
point.
It's a bag of air.
Yeah.
It's not real. And so what I've found is some of the most heart-driven, wonderful humans actually believe in themselves more than they think. But they're around toxic people who are pretending to be confident when they're not, so they have to knock everyone else down in order to keep their inflated confidence. I knew the moment I got on this episode that wasn't going to happen. I was psychologically safe from the moment we got on this episode. You want to know why? You have high self-belief. Probably higher than you think. So you're not insecure about me being more intelligent. You're not insecure about me saying something that's outside your comfort zone. You're just a very secure human being in yourself. So I have permission to actually fly. Whereas I've been on interviews with particularly men who are very deeply insecure and they just can't. They're doing this. They're constantly doing this instead of actually contributing in a constructive way to the conversation. They need to one up each other. You ever meet dudes who need to one up each other? It's
Yeah.
brutal,
Yeah.
right? Oh my
Yeah.
god!
Oh
And
yeah.
one of the
It's
reasons I
the
feel so
male
safe here.
ego.
Go ahead. What'd you say?
I was just saying sometimes it's the male ego
Oh, almost
battling. Yeah.
always,
Yeah.
almost
Mhm.
always. And you roll your eyes, all this stuff. Same. Because it's just that's not the point. That's not why we're here. I'm not here to be better than you. You're not here to be better than me. We are here to have a constructive conversation to help other people improve their lives. And number two, and this is a selfish reason, but it's true. And I want to talk about the truth. I'm here to practice my craft.
Mhm.
I'm here to learn how to articulate things in a more powerful way.
I was thinking, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from what you're saying, it almost seems like there's different pillars to life too. So you could be a level 6 goals financially and level 2 in fitness, where because I've seen where somebody has competency in one of these pillars of life, but then they're level 1 in a different pillar and they don't want to be at level 1, so they almost try to hitch a ride on somebody else's belief or accountability or something, right? So
100%.
is have you noticed that is also a thing where it's not just level 10 overall, it's different pillars?
It bothers me. And again, I used to be too cowardly to share some of this stuff publicly, but the people who don't lead by example in their real life when no one's watching, it's my biggest pet peeve. And I've also been guided a lot and misguided a lot by people who just don't really know anything. You know, those people who like talk a big game, but they've never studied. It's like, oh, well, my brother was a personal trainer, so I'm going to, right? That kind of stuff. I was definitely, I allowed myself to be victim of a lot of that. So I don't want to get my junk on anybody. But what I would say is it's very hard for me to learn from someone who isn't actually doing it. And I'll give you one tiny example. And again, I'm a huge fan of John Maxwell books. I really adore it. I have a book behind me called The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. And I adore the book. It's so good. Such a good book. I highly recommend it. But the problem is I'm really deeply passionate about fitness and physical health. And John never took his health seriously. He's never, and he literally, so this is the truth that I'm scared to share, but I'm going to share it. You literally wrote the book on how to maximize your potential, and you're like really not even remotely healthy. To me, and even that's me being nice about it. It's not okay with me. Now, do I think he's a bad person? No. I don't like learning from people who aren't practicing what they preach. If I'm not doing something, I will not share it. I will not share it if I'm not doing it. I just can't. It's something. And before my car accident, I can't say that. I talked more than I walked. And I want to make that clear because I became better, but I'm not inherently better at it. But for everybody out there, I remember being so full of it. It bothered me. I would say something and then not do it behind the scenes. And it ate away at me. That's how you destroy your self-belief and self-worth. And then what do you have to do? You have to overcompensate with this persona when in reality, you're just deeply insecure, particularly for men, but for everybody, really. And so how do you overcome insecurity? You either, number one, face it and accept it for what it is, or number two, you work on it until you're no longer insecure. So I was a tall, lanky, skinny, prepubescent, guy. And all the athletes in high school could dunk a basketball, and I was like this nerdy math geek who got bullied. And so I decided to start getting into fitness. And so I slowly overcame my insecurity of my tall, lanky physique. And now I'm a bigger, more built person. Doesn't mean I have no insecurity, but it's definitely not what it used to be. And then there's certain things you can't change about yourself that you're insecure about. And that's where the self-love and the self-acceptance piece comes in. And I think a lot of times people get that wrong. It's like, well, you should just accept yourself for being overweight. It's like, well, not if you can change it, right? Not if you can improve it, And then it gets into the self-shaming and all that stuff. I'm not shaming anyone. I don't want to bully anyone. I don't want to shame anyone. But the truth is the truth. And you are not overweight because you quit smoking. You're not overweight because you XYZ. There's got to be a line where we're honest enough with ourselves to say, I'm going to look in the mirror, and I did this with myself. Alan, you're out of shape because you drink too much and too often, because you don't work out consistently, because you don't track your habits, because you are constantly letting yourself down and breaking the promises you make to yourself about exercise. That's the reason I'm out of shape. And that's the truth. Okay. And it's no one's responsibility but my own to go and do something about that. That's an honest conversation with self that I think books and podcasts and motivational videos can help you have with yourself. But no one on a day-to-day basis other than you can get your butt on that yoga mat or get your butt on that Stairmaster or get your butt in the gym. And I tell everyone this is very freeing. Everyone hates the Stairmaster. It's not just you. I hate the Stairmaster every time, but I do it anyway. And afterwards, if you can hack it on the Stairmaster and drip the sweat and do the thing, afterwards you will be fulfilled. You'll have self-esteem, you'll have self-confidence, you'll have self-worth, you'll have self-belief, and you will build yourself up. And then other people, yes, will try to tear you down because that's the world we live in, and you're going to have to use that to motivate you to get even stronger and even stronger and even stronger. And it's, strength, I think, is having the courage to stand up for yourself and build yourself through adversity, not just for it to be easy. And so unfortunately, the more empowered and intelligent and capable we become, the more hate a lot of us will get, myself included, which I'm actually scared of right now. Right. I'm genuinely scared of how empowered I've been on this interview because I think I'm going to get some hate, and that is what it is. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just saying, I think part of that is the better you get, the more of a crystal clear mirror you become as a reflection of other people, and they see what they don't have in themselves. Oftentimes, right? The stronger you get, the smarter you get, the more successful you get. You start to become like a brighter and brighter mirror, where people see this dissonance in what they don't have. And, I love what you're talking about, because I've been there myself. I've experienced that cognitive dissonance of, I have these goals and I'm not working out and I'm not here. I want to be here, but I'm here. And you start beating yourself up over it until one day you just get that belief. You can move forward, you develop that competency. And I think that's where the true magic happens. It's the small wins, it's the compound wins of day to day battles, right? When you said the idea of you only see the stars at night in the darkness, it's also when the work is being done is behind the scenes, right? It's when nobody sees the stars. It's when you're working day in and day out. And eventually, when somebody sees a star or a sparkle or some success, they go, wow, like that's impressive. Like, can I join? How did you do that? How did you do that is the question. Well, it took years of hard work, right? But it took the first step just to get there.
It was
And I think a lot of
it
people
was
don't
that
jump.
shake. It was that special shake or that pill or that, I think it was 6 minute abs, or I think it was the 4 hour work week
Yeah.
that did it,
Right,
Yeah,
right.
no,
It's a shaker weights.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was that band that you can wear that gives you abs,
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
everything is, every true success, that's earned is the byproduct of positive choices compounded over time when no one's watching. And I used to have this written in my bathroom. I used to have a big whiteboard in there, and it said, what you do and who you are when no one's watching is all that really matters. And if you're doing it in the dark by yourself when you're alone, you will be more fulfilled. You might not have as shiny of an Instagram. You might not have 8 million followers, um, but you will be fulfilled, and you will be more successful too in the real world. In the real world, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that appear to be more successful than they are. I call it the inverse 10 law. Yeah, if someone is puffer fishing at level 10, they're actually 1/10 as successful as you think. And if they aren't
Yeah,
puffer
it's
fishing on
a
social media at all, they're actually 10 times more successful than you think. Kevin
yeah,
and
I
I
mean
all
that
the
makes
time,
sense,
he's
right?
like, dude, we don't look successful. I'm like, I know. I know, brother. It doesn't matter. Like, we are
Yeah,
successful, so it's all good.
absolutely. But, Alan, I love this conversation. I think the audience is going to get a good few points out of here. There were some very strong points you made. And, overall, I'm very excited that you got to come and share your wisdom with us. And thank you so much for being on the show.
This has been nothing short of an absolute honor. Thank you for creating the safe space for me to express, and hopefully what I expressed helps unlock some stuff for other people. And I also appreciate the fact that I was able to say my vulnerable truth of, I've come to understand that I am afraid to be villainized, and I want to share these amazing truths, and I want to help everyone grow, and I want to, and I just am. I'm still scared to be disliked and villainized, and I have to overcome that, and I have to have the courage to overcome that. And you helped facilitate that, so I really appreciate it, and I hope that this was helping of your listeners very much.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.